Welcome to the Crypto Layer HQ. Today we've had a small rejection from our first level that we discussed yesterday. It was our first critical level, since that was a level that was respected back in March of 2025 and even March of 2024 when it acted as resistance and then eventually support. So this was a clear level that was potentially going to have some sort of difficulty crossing, and we have rejected it so far. But that doesn't mean we won't go higher. Of course, the first tests usually get rejected, and it could just require a bit more consolidating here before we break through and potentially test 80K next. But that's to be seen. Of course, we could just end up rejecting from here and potentially just eventually going lower into April or May, since even if we look back in March of 2022, we did top towards the end of March. So that does give weight towards that we might still continue higher. But if we look back in 2018, March, it had its top in early March, March 5th. So you can easily argue both sides in terms of either we already topped since it's now the 5th of March, or you could say we're going to continue to rally into end of March the same way we did in 2022. But of course, like I've always said, predicting short-term price action is very difficult. I think what's also interesting to look at is Bitcoin dominance. So this time when we had the rally, Bitcoin dominance has gone up quite significantly, and that of course is bringing the altcoin market down. So if we see that we've now gone back to this major level and potentially even broken slightly below it, but of course we could end up bouncing again. But this is definitely a critical level to watch, since we might end up breaking below, and I do think if we do end up going below, there could be a sudden move down pretty quickly, since this has been a level that was respected in August of 2025, and then even when we wicked in October of 2025, we came straight back above, but then it was tested again in November and December 2 times, and then just even recently in January and February we can see this level keeps bouncing. So definitely if we do break from this level, it could result in quite a bit of capitulation in the altcoin market, and then we could end up testing this lower level, since that's a level that we tested many times back in the 2020 bear market and even 2019. We can see we went to these lower levels, which we still haven't managed to properly go down to for a considerable amount of time. We did get close to it back in June of 2025, but then we quickly rallied. So I think there is a good chance that we end up going back to these lower levels. Even if we look at, for example, XRP, we can see that it's broken from quite a critical level and it is going lower. So even if we do end up getting bounces, I think this level at 1.8 is going to be very strong and will most likely reject. So even if we do end up getting bounces to $1.8, we will most likely end up rejecting aggressively. And even if we look at Solana, we can see something similar where we've had a critical level basically at $121, $120. So I think even if we do end up managing to get back to those levels, we will also aggressively bounce. We will aggressively reject from that level. So there's a lot of altcoins that are looking like they're in positions that they might get rejected, and definitely a lot of weakness since they've already broken critical levels. If we look at Solana BTC, we can also see that it's essentially been on a downtrend since back in 2024, and even XRP Bitcoin has also been fading. If we look at XRP Bitcoin, it's also at a pretty major level. So if that level ends up breaking, that could also help this come significantly lower, since XRP and Solana are big altcoin pairs. If we look at Ethereum though, definitely it is at a level where we do end up having oftentimes support, so it might end up holding here for some time. And I would be a bit more bullish for Ethereum as opposed to XRP and Solana right now, since it's already gone down so much and it is at quite a big level where we did hold many times. I wouldn't be bullish in terms of it's going to have a run, but more in terms of it might have a bit more relative strength compared to Solana and XRP, which I think right now are looking like they've already broken critical levels and probably will continue to fade. So definitely keep an eye on those, and especially look at the altcoin market cap against Bitcoin, since now it's at a critical level that might break and end up going lower, which will also end up pushing Bitcoin dominance higher, which I think will eventually end up testing the highs again at 66%. But that might take some time towards later this year. But yeah, if we look at Bitcoin, we can see now it's rejected. So definitely going to be interesting to see if it does manage to continue its momentum that it had yesterday on the 4th of March. And if it does manage to have continued momentum and potentially go to even 80K, that could give some relief rallies in the altcoin market as well, and potentially getting a final push before I think we're going to ultimately get some more aggressive capitulation and drawdowns into the summer months of this year.